Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I've got a first impressions to do for you. Are you sick of first impressions videos yet? I don't know, there's a lot of them happening lately. This is the Benchmade 940, and this knife was loaned to me by my buddy YD Knives. His link will be in the description below, down to his Instagram. This is one of 4 knives that he loaned to me. But this is the knife that got the conversation of this batch of loaner knives started. Because I've mentioned a few times on this channel, as I've talked about other Benchmades, that I've never owned a 940. And I would argue, at least from what I have perceived in my time of knife collecting and being kind of what I would consider deep in the knife hobby. I spent my entire life carrying knives and enjoying knives and cutting things with knives, outdoors, indoors, all kinds of stuff. I've always been into knives, but for the last couple years, I've really been into knives. And to normal people, even normal guys who carry knives on a daily basis, I am a weirdo with how into knives I am. If you're watching this video, you're probably like me. This is a safe space for us. But even before I was into knives and just carried knives and had a couple of knives, not like 20, 30 knives, had like a couple of knives, I knew what the Benchmade 940 was. I knew 1 or 2 people who had them. This knife has been out for a very long time. It was, before I was really into knives, way more than I would have spent on a knife. But at this point, it's way less than I have spent on some knives. I still think it's fairly expensive for what it is, and that's a conversation to be had. But this is a knife that, if there's any knife from Benchmade that I have perceived to be kind of a benchmark of an EDC knife that they have created, especially for a long time, like before the bug out came out, it was basically this and the Griptilian were the ones that people talked about, carried, and that really got most of the love that Benchmade got. So I've been aware of it for a very long time. And when I first started collecting knives, I really wanted one. There was a time actually where I almost traded for one and the other guy backed out. Otherwise I would have had one. But there's a bunch of versions of this knife. There's this one is the standard with this green aluminum, a purple backspacer, S30V blade steel. And then there's like the Dash 1, which is carbon fiber, and S90V. And then recently they did the one that's all titanium and I think 20 CV. I don't know. I think they did just like 1,000 of those or something. It's like I don't know what model, how they designate that, kind of like a sprint run. Anyway, there's probably 10 or 15 versions of this knife total. There was an REI exclusive. There's been exclusives from a number of retailers, whether they're G10 or carbon fiber or wood and G10, or like there's a bunch of configurations of this knife. This is the most vanilla, regular, standard version that there is. And I'm glad it is, because this is a user from my buddy who sent it to me, and he said I can carry it, use it, experience it. That's what I'm setting out to do. So why have I never owned one? Like I said, I was very close, specifically that one time. There's been a couple other times where I've seen some for pretty good deals on like Reddit or something. I think one time I might have even DM'd a guy to buy one, but he had just gotten an offer before mine, and so it had just sold. I've been close a number of times. But there's also something that kind of happened where when I first started collecting knives, I really wanted one because I knew so many people praised it as being EDC gold. Like just a lot of people think this is basically the ultimate EDC knife. I really wanted one. And then by the time I was able to get one, I was close a couple of times. And then I started experiencing more knives from other companies that are not as well known as Benchmade, or like Zero Tolerance or Spyderco. And I think what really happened is I kind of got past it and I got into more unique stuff. By the time that I had the money for this and could have just bought one, I wanted to buy other things. Like I was learning more about other parts of the knife community that I didn't know existed. I knew this existed all along. For 10, 15 years, I've known this knife was a knife and I've thought it was cool. But by the time I could get one and was like in the mode of collecting, there were other more unique things out there. So does that mean that I ever stopped wanting to try this knife? No. I've always thought it would be fun to get a 940 and see what it's made of. I just skipped over it for a while. So I'm excited that now, especially because within the past month or so, I've had kind of a new excitement for Benchmade, which started when I got my Super Freak. I guess it also kind of started when the last time that YD Knives lent me some knives, he sent me the Anthem, which I really, really liked. Up until that Anthem and the Super Freak, the only real Benchmades that were doing anything for me in recent time have been the Bailout and the Bug Out. The Bug Out is one of my core carry models that I carry frequently. The Bailout is basically an enhanced Bug Out. I've had several knives other than those Benchmades over the past year and a half or so. Some traded for, some I bought, and they don't tend to stick around all that long other than the Bug Out and now the Bailout. But then the Mini Freak, I got that and I just felt like I needed it, and now I have one and I love that knife. I carry it a lot. It's a great knife. And then the Super Freak came out, and then now the Mini Freak, which is carbon fiber S90V scaled down version of a Freak, and it's excellent and I've been loving it. I'll have a full review up on that very soon. And those Benchmades have like made me kind of re-fall in love with Benchmade. Love is a strong word, but I really like Benchmade lately. I have hesitancies about them because there are some things that they seem to still be struggling with, or some design choices that they make that I don't always love, but there's some models that they're just knocking out of the park. So all of that being said, it's time finally for me to give the 940 a proper try. And if it goes well, and I fall in love with this knife like I did with the Super Freak, or like I love the Bug Out, or if it's at all in that arena, then I'm probably going to end up getting one. If I get one, it probably won't be this one, because S30V is not even close to my favorite blade steel, and they offer so many better ones in other versions. Aluminum isn't my favorite handle material, although it's fine. I'll probably get like the Dash 1, which is carbon and S90V, or a carbon or a G10 version or something. We'll see if that happens, when it happens, what I'll actually get. But this one is the perfect one to experience the model with, I think, because it's the regular one. It's where this model, I think, was launched with this configuration, and it's just the approachable one to try out. So my first impressions of the knife, with all of that said, are that it's well made. As Benchmades go, it's centered. This one I would say is like 60-40. It does just barely favor the show side, but that might be able to be adjusted out. It might just be because this knife has been used extensively. I'm fine with that. The blade's stock thickness is great. The grind is great. It's not thin behind the edge. I'm not going to pretend it is, but it's not too thick. As an EDC knife, it feels kind of robust, which is nice with how thin this blade is. It doesn't feel fragile in any way. This grind, it feels nice. It's not a thin slicing beast, but it's more of an all-arounder type of knife, which is okay with me. The edge on it is excellent. I believe this is still the factory edge, and it's very sharp. Feels great. It's even. It's ground well. I like the swedge. I like the reverse tanto. I dig that blade shape. I like the type of tip it gives you. I like the kind of strength of the tip that comes with that. It feels nice to me. Everything about this knife proportionally makes a lot of sense. The tallness of the blade, would it be advantageous for this knife to be taller with its flat grind so that it could get thinner behind the edge and just have a little more belly or something? Maybe, but I think part of what makes the 940 so fantastic is that it is so freaking slim. This profile is excellent in pocket, and especially with the mini deep carry clip on it. This is not only my favorite clip from Benchmade, but one of my preferred clips in general. This knife carries so well. Like, if you're comparing this to a PM2 in pocket, which I've seen a lot of people do for some reason, I think because this is like Benchmade's premium EDC model, and the PM2 is kind of Spyderco's premium EDC model, like their flagships, if you will. These knives are so different for every reason other than that I don't really find them that comparable. But this knife is just so trim. It's absolutely slim and small and lightweight in the pocket, and it carries really, really well. I've put this knife in pocket a couple of times since opening it up for at least portions of the day, and it's excellent. It's just very good in pocket. That's probably the best thing about it, is how it carries, which makes sense. Benchmade is pretty good at, when they focus on making a knife carry well, like the Bug Out, for example. The Bug Out might be my favorite knife in terms of how it goes in pocket to how much blade length you get and how usable it is. It's just an excellent ratio, and there's a great ratio happening here as well. So there's that. The scales themselves, the ergos work for me really well. I've heard conflicting things about 940 ergos. Some people think they're like the end-all be-all best ergos. Other people don't like that there's no real hump back here or like real groove to catch you from the knife slipping out this way. I'll say it could feel more locked in. It does feel very neutral. I don't know. I'm torn on it. We'll see when it comes to the full review how I really feel about it. Here are my thoughts so far. I don't see this knife as being a hard use knife. I kind of categorize even EDC knives in my book, where there are some EDC knives which are like, if I put this in my pocket, I could do anything I need to today with it. And there are other knives where I put them in my pocket because I know exactly what I have planned for that day, and nothing that hardcore is supposed to come up. I don't think this is like, I'm going to be doing some crazy stuff today. I'm going to be helping a buddy build a fence. I need to make sure I have a pocket that can handle anything, or a knife in pocket that can handle anything that would go along with that type of activity. This would be like I'm having a normal day today. The most crazy thing I'll probably need to do is open up some packages and maybe cut open toy packaging for my daughter and cut some thread off my like most typical EDC knives for me, what I would consider like a regular use EDC knife. This should do anything like that. And not having a handle that's super locked in and isn't going to let my hand slide off of it I don't think it's something that I should necessarily expect of this knife, because I don't think that's the designed intention of this knife. It's kind of like I already said, people compare this knife to the PM2 a lot of the time. I don't think they're that comparable. I really don't. The PM2 is one of the most locked in, grippy, ergonomic, like hard work type knives while still being pretty slicey that I've experienced. It's part of why I love the PM2 so much. If I'm going to be doing EDC tasks with a knife and I'm planning on working hard with it, my 10V PM2 is at the top of the list of knives that I'll pick to do that. But if it's a normal, like more lightweight, casual EDC kind of day, this is going to carry so much better in pocket. And for opening packages, I'm not worried about a knife slipping out of my hand. This could have the most neutral, just like no curves, nothing handle to it. And I wouldn't be worried about it coming out of my hands for doing stuff like that, or slicing an apple, or any of that kind of stuff. So at this point, I'm not going to hold it against it. I may find when I do the full review that I'd prefer for there to be some kind of a swell back here at the back of the handle. But at the moment, it doesn't particularly bother me for what I would use this knife for. Let's think. I guess with that too, I should say, if I wanted to grab a Benchmade for stuff like that, I could also just grab the Super Freak, which I own, which does have a pretty nice swell, makes my hand feel very locked in. I just did a comparison between the Super Freak and my PM2, and the Super Freak held its weight in that comparison. That's a great hard use EDC knife in my book. Borderline like outdoor use knife to me. So this wouldn't be that, but I have a Benchmade that could do that. So I don't need this to fit that role. Anyway, let's talk. Yeah, I guess that's ergos. We've talked about blade. The clip is excellent. I don't think Benchmade ships these with this clip on it, but you could easily get one of these clips from Benchmade and put it on. That's fine. I don't know which clip they do typically ship with. I should probably know, but if I got one of these clips would go on it immediately. So I'm going to assume that this is the clip that you're going to be using if you are taking my information to weigh whether you want this knife or not. Axis lock. This one, Whitey Knives has added some Aftermarket Springs to, which are supposedly a little bit stronger than the typical Omega Springs. I will say, since he said that, if I'm really looking for it, I do feel it's a little bit, not stiffer, but it has, yeah, it's stronger. It's a stronger spring than the typical Omega Springs, and it feels great to me. I like Axis locks. I don't love Axis locks for super hard use knives. I feel like there's better lock types for that, but for EDC knives, Axis lock is great. I've never had one fail on me. They lock up pretty well. They do, I find, to have what I would call their intended action, being able to flick open super well and to drop shut, which in my opinion, an Axis lock should drop shut. Usually, in order to get them as drop shutty as people want them to be, as I think they should be with that lock type, there has to be a little bit of blade play. And here, we've got a little bit of blade play. It's not a ton. It's not unacceptable for me. Again, for what I'm expecting to use this knife for, I wouldn't be particularly worried about it. But some people probably look at this knife as being expected to do really hardcore tasks. And I'm sure some people have done some testing to prove whether or not it's capable of that. I haven't seen any videos that I can recall where they've really tested the integrity of the Axis lock for super hard use. But I don't know. I'm fine with the Axis lock on here. I like the way an Axis lock functions for an EDC knife. So I'm cool with it. I dig it. Especially with these springs in it. I don't know what springs he used, whether they're wolf springs or what, but it feels good to me. And it functions really well. And it's also, if you're a lefty, an awesome locking mechanism. Because for a left-handed user, it functions exactly like it does for a right-handed user. And all you got to do is switch the clip onto the other side, and this knife is exactly how it is for a right-handed user, just for a lefty. So that's great. I use my knives right-handed, but I'm somewhat ambidextrous. I write and shoot left-handed and eat left-handed, if that makes sense. But usually the only times I use knives left-handed are for like super finite, like food prep or really delicate, precise, like fine motor skill tasks. Sometimes I'll pass it to my left hand. So I like it when I can use a knife left-handed and not be a total idiot doing so, because some right-handed knives are very difficult to use left-handed. So ambidextrous mechanism is a great thing. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything else. I'm already coming up on 20 minutes, so I should probably, this is a first impressions, I should probably end it about here. But I guess I'll finish in this way. Is this knife up to my expectations of what I perceived this knife to be before having one in hand for this long? Because like I said, I'd held them before. I'd played with one for a minute or two in a knife shop probably. I've known people who've had them, but I'd never really like put one in pocket, carried it around, pulled it out, cut something with it, experienced it. I've only opened, I think, 2 packages with this knife so far. It hasn't done all that much, but is it up to my expectations of what it would be? And so far, yeah. So far, I feel like I was pretty spot on with what I was expecting from this knife compared to what I'm getting out of it. It hasn't shocked me and been like, wow, this is, I have to buy one right now. Like with the Super Freak, the second I unboxed one, I finished it and I ordered one because I felt like I needed that knife. At this point, I don't feel like my collection would suffer without this knife. Would I carry this one if I had it? Every now and then, probably. If I got a spicier version of it, like the Dash 1, probably an even better case that it would make it into pocket, especially with how much I've been loving the Mini Freak. But I think it's a very solid offering. I think this knife, now that I'm kind of, it's meeting my expectations, I think if I were to buy a knife for somebody who's not a real knife guy, and I wanted to get them something very nice, like this would be considered a high-end knife if you're not into the hobby like some of us are, this would be a great knife to gift somebody. Like if I was giving my dad a knife, and it was a knife that I was confident he would like and feel the quality in, and I knew he would appreciate a Benchmade specifically, which a lot of people would because they already have a name association with Benchmade, like I did before I was deep into knives. This would be an excellent like gift knife to give someone, a very nice knife that they could use and love forever for the things that typical people will use a knife for. Once you're deeper in, like I am, I think it's just, to me, it's looked at as a good knife. It is a solid knife. It is a trustworthy knife. It has its reputation for a reason, but there are more niche things out there which are going to do the things that this knife does as well, and maybe be more exciting at doing it, if that makes sense. I don't know. I've probably rambled quite a bit in here. I apologize if I've talked in circles a little bit. Those of you who watch these videos all the way through and get to my kind of final thoughts and some of this rambling sometimes, thank you. I appreciate you. I'll let that be that on this video today. Thank you to all of those who like and subscribe. I am so close to hitting 1,000. When that happens, there will be a giveaway. So be looking out for that. And I appreciate all those of you who like, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram. My Patreon patrons especially, thank you guys so much. Those of you who've ordered t-shirts, thank you so much. Those of you who bought stickers from me, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you guys more than I can say. I'm having so much fun doing this. And thank you most of all, in this instance, to Whitey Knives, who lent me this knife to not only check out and hold, but said I can use and carry and really test out. That's meaningful to me, to have somebody who trusts me to borrow their knife and use it, especially after watching some of my use videos. Not gonna be doing anything crazy and getting nuts with this knife, but it's meaningful that he's willing to let me borrow this. So thank you to everybody who's been supportive, especially Whitey Knives. Again, his link will be in the description. Please give him a follow on Instagram. He's a cool dude with awesome knives in his collection and makes some cool content. So you'll probably enjoy what he makes on Instagram if you enjoy what I make on here or what I make on Instagram. Anyway, that was a lot. I'll talk to you guys soon. This is the 940.